Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to my channel. If you're new, I'm Kelly, this is KBellaBeauty, and today I am here to compare two pretty popular palettes here on YouTube, and it is the Modern Renaissance palette by Anastasia Beverly Hills and one of the new Wet n Wild palettes. This one is in Rosé in the Air. This is the new formula and the new packaging that Wet n Wild came out with. I know they have like several shades, like they have another Comfort Zone palette, they have some neutral palettes, they have like a peachy palette. This one is Rosé in the Air. I have been hearing it compared to the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette. So I wanted to check it out for myself. I wanted to test out these two palettes on the eye. And since I had both in my collection, I thought I would film a video and let you guys know if I thought that these were a dupe for each other. Now, I did see Natalie from #FabLife do this video, and then I saw Kellum do this video as well. So I will link both of their videos down below. I'm sure there are other videos here on YouTube, but those are the two that I've seen, and I did try to do a look that was different than both of theirs. So if you haven't seen those videos, even after I kind of tell you my thoughts on if I think these are a dupe or not, I would still say go check them out because, like I said, like they did different looks from each other and then I did a different look from them. So you can kind of see three looks using the same two palettes. So if you're interested in checking out if these two palettes are dupes for each other, go ahead and keep on watching. Now, I will leave timestamps down below in case you're only interested in seeing a certain part of this video, but I am going to do a demo where I show you how I created this look, and then I'm going to do some swatches and kind of talk about the two palettes. So if there's only one specific part you want to see, check the description box, and then you can just kind of fast forward to that part. I want to start by telling you a little bit about each palette. So the new Wet n Wild palettes, they just released. You can find these on Wet n Wild's website. You can also find them at certain drugstores like CVS or Walgreens. I kind of have a hard time finding them in store. I feel like they're really popular right now and people are kind of like buying them and picking them up off the shelf. But if you can find them in a drugstore, you can obviously go ahead and grab it there. But I did purchase mine on Wet n Wild's website, and I do actually have a Test It Out Tuesday first impression on this palette, and then coming up here in a couple weeks I am going to do a full review. So definitely check those videos out if you want to hear a little bit more in depth on my actual opinion on this palette. But as far as this goes, it is $5.99. It's very, very affordable, and you do get 10 eyeshadow shades. Now in the Modern Renaissance, ooh, what is this palette? I want to say, is it maybe $42 or $45? I probably should have looked that up, but I will look it up and I'll list the price on the screen. But this definitely is a high-end palette. It does come with a high-end price tag. You do get 14 shades, so you get more shades in this palette than the Wet n Wild palette, but you also are spending a little bit more money. However, this has been a favorite of mine. I know this is like definitely a YouTube fan favorite palette, and it's definitely a staple in any collection. But if there's a dupe out there, I feel like people are gonna wanna know about it. So I'm actually going to go ahead and insert some swatches on the screen right now, and before I tell you which side is which, I want you to let me know in the comments down below, do you think the top row is the Wet n Wild or do you think the bottom row is the Wet n Wild? So pause this video real quick, comment down below, and let me know if you think the top or the bottom is Wet n Wild. So the top row is actually going to be the swatches of the Wet n Wild palette, and the bottom row are the swatches of the Anastasia Beverly Hills palette. Now I did notice when I was swatching these shades that they're both very pigmented. Don't get me wrong, both the Wet n Wild and the Ebates shadows are very, very pigmented, but I would say that the Anastasia shadows are just a smidge more pigmented. You don't need to run your finger through the shadow as much, and then when you're putting it on the skin, it definitely shows up a bit more, but it's kind of awkward on my arm here. So as you can see by the looks of the swatches alone, I definitely think that these palettes are a dupe for each other. I mean, when I'm looking at them in person, there are very, very few differences. Like I would say the Wet n Wild, the cream shade in the Rosé in the Air, this shade right here, which is a dupe for Tempera. I feel like Tempera has a little bit of like a satin finish, whereas the Wet n Wild is matte. But once it's swatched on my arm, like I cannot really tell a difference, you know, like you can't really see, oh, this one has a little bit more of a satiny finish. But otherwise, all of the shades are spot on. I think Antique, it's like so hard for me to show you. I do think the Antique Bronze shade in the Anastasia palette is a little bit more pigmented than the matching shade in the Wet n Wild. It looks just like a little bit deeper, but again, not something that I think you would really be able to tell on the eyes. So if I am looking at the swatches on my hand, I'll insert a picture because it's kind of awkward for me to show you. But the first shade is this cream shade right here, followed by the transition shade. Then we have this shimmer shade. We have this kind of lavender shade. Then we go right down the line with the orange, the deeper red, the magenta, and then I have the kind of bronzy shade followed by this deep dark shade right here. Now the thing that is kind of inconvenient, I've literally just now noticed, is that there are no shade names on the Wet n Wild, so I just kind of have to like point and describe. So if you're a YouTuber, that might be really annoying, but I feel like for the everyday person, you don't really need to know names. Then when I'm looking at the ABH side, so the first shade that I have there is Tempera. That's the first one swatched on my arm, followed by Raw Sienna. Now, I feel like Raw Sienna was a better fit than the Burnt Orange for that transition shade. Then you have Primavera. You also have Bon Fresco as the lavender shade. Then you have Realgar as the orange, followed by Red Ochre. Love Letter is the magenta shade that I feel like matches better, followed by Antique Bronze and Citrus Umber. So you don't really have a shade for Vermeer, Golden Ochre, Burnt Orange, or Warm Taupe. And actually, I do wish that this had the Vermeer shade in here as well, just because Vermeer is typically what I use to like highlight my inner corner and my brow bone, and I feel like that's like a really pretty highlighting shade. But the only real shimmer you have in the Wet n Wild, besides the one that's a dupe for Antique Bronze, is Primavera, and that's like a very champagne gold shade. Let's go ahead and get into the demo. I'm going to show you how I created this look right here. I am first going to prime my eyes with my Urban Decay eyeshadow primer potion. This is in the shade Eden, and a little bit goes a long way with this stuff. So I'm just going to put a little bit on both of my eyes, and then I just blend it out with my finger. Make sure you use clean fingers when you blend it out, and just gently press on your eyelid. You definitely don't want to do any like harsh tugging or pulling or anything like that. Okay, so we will do Wet n Wild on this side, and we will do Anastasia Beverly Hills on this side. Now I do have to use the same brushes just because I don't have like a ton of brushes that I can use, or a ton of favorites I should say, and I wish I had one of those like Vera Mona like little switch things to clean it, but I don't, so I'm just gonna wipe it off on a paper towel. But I'm gonna start by going in with this like cream shade right here in the Wet n Wild palette, and I'm just gonna use that to set the eyeshadow primer that I put down. And then doing the same thing on this side, but I'm gonna go in with Tempera. Now I wanna do a look that's a little bit different. I don't want to create the same look as Natalie from #FabLife or Kristi Kellum. So I think I might go into a little bit of the cooler shades. So I'm gonna start with this kind of pinky purple shade, this like light lavender. And I'm just going to put that in the crease. I'm not really like doing anything fancy here. I'm just literally taking it into the crease and blending it out. And this is a E40 from Sigma, the tapered blending brush. And I really like this for putting your transition shade down, because I feel like it gets it where you want it to go, but it's also fluffy enough to blend it out. And then I'm gonna go in with Bon Fresco from ABH and do the same thing on this side right here. I do feel like the ABH shadows are a little bit more pigmented when I swatched them all, I had to kind of use a little bit of a lighter pressure with the ABH, but the Wet n Wild shadow quality is really nice. But I feel like looking at the eye shades, the ABH is like a little bit darker, so I'm actually gonna wipe my brush off and try to go in with a little bit more of the Wet n Wild just to build it up so that it's even. Okay, so I'm gonna go in with a little bit of a more pointed brush. This is the Y19 from Morphe. It's dirty. All my brushes are dirty. I need to wash them, but I'm just wiping off any excess on a towel. And I'm going to go in with this magenta shade in a really light hand because it's a bright shade. But I'm gonna put this just kind of in the crease, but like the outer portion of the crease. That's where I want to concentrate like the most pigment. And then the shade that I think is most similar to this shade is Love Letter right here. So again, I wiped my brush off. I'm gonna tap off the excess and do the same thing. Put it kind of in this outer crease portion and the outer V. Again, I feel like it's just a little bit more pigmented, but honestly, by the end of this whole thing, I don't know if you're gonna be able to tell which is which. We'll have to see. You can be the judge of that. I do not have any product on here. I just kind of want to blend it out a little bit on both sides and blend those two shades together. And again, I want to go back in with the Wet n Wild because I want to build up the color on this side. I feel like it's just a little bit brighter on the Modern Renaissance side, so I need to add a little bit more pigment to even them out. Then I'm going to use my favorite brush for applying eyeshadow on the lid, and that's the Royal & Lang Nickel Medium Eye Shader. And I'm going to take this shade right here, and I am going to spritz my brush with a little bit of Fix Plus just because I feel like it really creates a nice kind of like foiled look on the lid. So here we go with the Wet n Wild. As you can see, I think it's really pigmented. And this is a really pretty color too. It's not a color that I think of using right away when I look at these palettes because they look super warm toned, but I just feel like it's a really, really pretty shade. And then I don't have extra product on here. I'm like wiping it off a little bit, but I just kind of want to blend out the edges just a touch. Then I'm actually going to flip my brush over and use the back side and go into Antique Bronze. And same thing, I am going to spritz my brush with Fix Plus. Ooh, this is super pigmented. This one looks a touch darker on the eye, I think. And I don't know if you can see, can you see all of this fallout right here? I do not have any on this side. Definitely got some right there, even with Fix Plus. So it's a little disappointing, especially since I already did my face, but you know, it's okay. Life happens. So I feel like I want to warm the crease up just like a little tiny bit. So I am just going to take this brown transition shade and the same tapered blending brush E40 by Sigma, and I'm just taking like a little bit, and I'm just gonna put it kind of right above where the mauve shade was, and this is just gonna lighten it up a touch. And then I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna go into a little bit of raw sienna, tap it off, and just kind of warm up the look a little bit. So I actually don't know that I loved adding the brown in there, and if you're recreating this, like if I was recreating this, I might have either just left it out or gone in with the brown first, but that's okay. We're just gonna roll with it. I actually want to take this like white cream shade here, and I already went over the whole eyelid with this when I was setting my eyeshadow primer, but I just want to kind of go back in under the brow bone just because I have small eyes, so it's easy for everything to kind of get lost in my small lid space. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go back into Tempera, which actually kind of has like more of a satin look to it. And just kind of clean up the brow bone a little bit. For the lower lash line, I don't like to go in with mauve-y shades. So what I'm going to do is just go in with that brown transition shade and kind of put it right underneath my lower lashes. Just kind of blending it out and buffing it out a little bit. And then I'm going to do the same thing with Raw Sienna. Then I'm actually going to take my Y21 from Morphe and get a little bit of that lid shade and just kind of press it on the outer half of the lash line, because I feel like that's going to kind of help tie in the top and bottom of the eyelid together. You know, since we put brown on the lower lash line, I still want to bring a little bit of like that mauve shade in. So then I will also dip back into Antique Bronze and do the same thing on this side. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and hop off camera. I'm gonna finish the eyes, I'm gonna throw a lip on, and then we'll come back to talk about if these two palettes are a dupe or not. And this is the finished look. This is the Wet n Wild side. This is the Anastasia Beverly Hills side. And in my opinion, just by looking at it, I can't really tell a difference. Like, if I went out in public right now, I don't think people would be like, wow, that girl is wearing two different eyeshadow palettes on her eyes. So I definitely would say that these two palettes are a dupe for each other. Now, I love my Anastasia Modern Renaissance palette. I'm definitely going to love the new Rosé in the Air by Wet n Wild. But if you maybe can't afford the high price tag for Anastasia, or if you just don't have this palette and you're looking for a cheaper alternative, I would say go with the Wet n Wild. It's only $5.99. I love Wet n Wild shadows. I feel like the quality is really there. And on the eyes, you can't really tell a difference. Even swatching, you couldn't really tell a difference. So I definitely think these are a dupe for each other, but I would like to know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you have both of these palettes? Are you gonna pick up the Wet n Wild? And can you tell by looking at my eyes which side is which, or do you guys think it's a dupe? I would really like to know your opinion in the comments down below. Otherwise, that's gonna do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're new, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I am posting 3 days a week. I get a video up either on like Mondays or Tuesdays, a little bonus video, but then regularly I am scheduled to go up Wednesdays at 5 p.m. CST and Saturdays at 11 a.m. CST. You can also follow me on my other social medias. I will have those listed down below, and thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.